All right, so I wanted to show you how you could sculpt one of your textural wall tiles. So I'm basically starting off with a pinch pot. I always want to work towards the center of my form first, pushing my thumb against the back of my outside hand so that I can really feel that thickness. I'm going to leave this a little bit on the thicker side, but I am trying to make sure my walls are as even as possible. I'm not too worried about it being perfect on the edge there, but I am looking for about a finger's thickness and smooth out my interior. We're going to make it nice, even though this isn't the part that you really see. It's always important to make sure that you make it all pretty. Right now I'm smoothing out the wall and making sure that it's even, so as I'm using my thumb, I'm pushing it against the palm of my hand so that I can feel that thickness and really even it out. That's my first goal, is to just get a nice even wall thickness, kind of like rolling out a slab to start off with. Now I want to now that my walls are pretty even, again about that finger thickness, I'm going to get my ruler out, and so that way I can kind of be working with that 4-inch segment. And I want to turn this into a square, so I'll start to just squish it. And squish those little corners so that I can start to make my square. Now the tricky part is trying not to turn it into like weird diamond or parallelogram or whatever. So I'm just gonna get all, like as I'm looking at it in this direction, I can see all of the walls and stuff, and I'm going to try to smooth that out a little bit. I'm not super worried about it being perfect, but I do want my walls to be even. I'll show you what we're going to do in a minute. But the first thing I want to do is actually smooth all of this out. So I'm going to get my serrated rib out, and I'm going to start scraping. And this is the glory of the serrated rib, is that I can really go over the surface and smooth out all of those lumps and bumps. So when you're in the lumpy potato stage of your pinch pot development, using that serrated rib is going to be your bestest friend. And while I'm doing this, I'm making sure that my hand is on the inside. So anytime you're applying pressure on the outside, you generally want to have pressure on the inside if you're trying to maintain that form. And I'm not setting it down really on the table like it's like lightly touching the table, but you can see how wet it is, so it like moves around really easy. So I'm trying to keep it nice and supported so I don't have it rubbing against the table too much. Make sure I clean out this other side. If you got like junk on there, it's going to show up in your piece. Also be careful though, rubbing your finger along that. If you do it wrong, you'll cut yourself. So don't cut yourself. It's like a cruddy metal paper cut. So you can see as I'm smoothing this out, I'm really holding that tool, like the rib, rounded over the surface so it's bent, but it's almost like I try to get it as flat onto the piece as possible. So I'm not scraping off the surface, but I'm really like smoothing it over the surface. I want to make that as pretty as possible. Now we'll go back and get our, reestablish our square. And I'm using the palms of my hands as I do this. Notice like anytime I pick it up and that sort of stuff, I really try to pick it up with 2 hands. It's still very like floppy at this point. And I don't want to be like wiggling it back and forth, especially not tremendously, because you will cause cracks and stuff if you work on this for too long. If you start working on it and it gets really cracky and you can't smooth it out, then you can add a little bit of water. But I'd like you to notice that I have not used any water at this point, and I don't think I really will be using too much water at all. I'm going to go fix all those little like edges again, see how that's looking. I'm kind of looking at the overall shape and also pushing from the inside to like kind of smooth that out a little bit. So that I can have it nice and even. So I'm going to take my, so this is why we weren't super worried about that bottom. So it's nice and thick, so I'm just going to take my needle tool and kind of drag that along the side. That way I don't have to worry about cutting myself. And then just kind of level that all off. So it's already better. And the walls are relatively even, so that's like a good sign. I'm going to try to make sure that that actually looks like a square. If it doesn't look like a square from the bottom, why is it going to look like a square from the top? So use both sides. I'll tap it down so that I can, because I do want this to be flat against the wall. So it's worthwhile to spend a little bit of time on that. Now, the next thing I have to consider on this is that I do need to have a hanging mechanism. So I need to make a rim that goes in. Remember, we're looking for a 1/2 inch. We want that hanging part to be a 1/2 inch down from the inside. So I'm folding over all of my sides and just kind of tucking over. And that's actually going to help me out because the texture that I'm looking to create is actually a nice, soft, squishy looking texture. So this is a great technique to use for like sculpting in general. So I'm going back and kind of reshaping with my thumb on the inside to really try to get this into this nice, like, puffy little bubble. And you can see where my finger's coming through. Like I can watch that coming, showing up on the other side. So if you don't have that support on the other side, now you'll start to get, that's where you start to move things around. But if you're not looking to move things around, then you want to make sure that you have your hand on either side. And that can help even things out, but it can also help maintain that form. So when you're trying to do a sort of like soft and texture, you really, which you're like, how is that a texture? But you'll see. You really want to make sure that everything looks really like round, like there's not really any, like from the shadow that you're getting and that sort of stuff. Everything should be like a really soft, smooth, and gradual shadow. If you're seeing like cottage cheesy things, that's no good. So I'm going to take my hand on here. So I want to make that soft texture, and we've talked about this before, where if you squeeze your arm, you can see what that kind of like looks like. So I'm going to squeeze my hand into this. So, and then I'm actually going in with my, so as I'm holding it, I want to exaggerate this a little bit. So I'm actually holding it and then taking my hand from the inside and kind of just pushing the clay up in between my fingers a little bit so I can get a good squishy look. I wanted it to look kind of like somebody just went in and grabbed some dough. And I also want to go back and get that corner back a little bit, because I do want it to still be a square. So it's this constant back and forth where you make little adjustments, where you make it more back to the shape, and then you make sure that it's back to the texture. And as you work on this, so there's my little squish. See how it just kind of goes around and kind of there. Yes, that's what I was looking for. That little squish where it's bulging between my fingers. So when I take this, I'll smooth that out. And I think the really important bit about this sort of squishy texture is that there can't be any corners. If I got any corners, then I'm ruining that look. So it's all about, or no sharp corners, I should say. Like all of the transitions should be really soft and smooth. Okay, and it's worthwhile. These are going to go up on the wall. Don't just look at your piece from the top. Look at it from the side. Look at it from all of the angles. Make sure you found all of the little like crumbs and stuff. And any little like weird cottage cheesy moments, and smooth those things out. It makes such a huge difference because otherwise it just totally pulls you out of the illusion. And again, no water. If adding water to this just makes everything like super gritty and it's no fun. Okay, so I'm just gonna even out that square, make sure that it's all looking good, and this is the time to kind of fuss. So like right now what I'm looking for is any parts on here that are looking a little bit not smooth, any sort of like I don't know, little tiny cracks or dents and that sort of stuff. I'm going around the edge, make sure that I have a really good thing to actually hook onto so that I have something to actually hang this from. Because it's not a very good wall tile if you can't actually hang it on the wall. Take your time, guys. Get all of those little edges, all of the little crumbs. Okay, that's looking pretty good, I think. Everything's smooth. I think it's it. Good. There's a soft little tile with a hanging mechanism. Yeah.